Kate Morrison opened her eyes to bright white lights. The ceiling above her was clean and smooth. She tried to move her hands, but pain shot through her arms like lightning. White bandages covered both hands from fingertips to wrists. The medical bay of the Starship Horizon was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Kate remembered the explosion. The plasma conduit had burst during the battle with the Zephyrian fleet. She had been trying to fix the damaged power line when everything went wrong. Fire had filled the engine room. Her hands had been caught in the blast. "You are awake," said a voice nearby. Kate turned her head to see Dr. Lennox walking toward her bed. The alien doctor was tall and thin with blue skin and long tentacles instead of hair. "Your hands took heavy damage. The burns go deep." Kate tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Dr. Lennox gave her water through a tube. "The cool liquid helped. How bad is it?" Kate asked. Dr. Lennox looked at a tablet in her hands. "The burns cover most of your palm area and fingers. We saved the hands, but they will never work like before. You will have trouble with small movements. Fine work will be hard or impossible." Kate closed her eyes. She was an engineer. Her job needed careful handwork. Building circuits, fixing delicate parts, working with tiny tools, all of this needed steady fingers and strong grip. Without that, what could she do? The door to the medical bay opened with a soft hiss. Heavy footsteps entered the room. Kate opened her eyes to see General Vextar walking in. The alien general stood 7 feet tall. His body looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and green armor-like skin. His large compound eyes could see in all directions at once. Behind the general came other officers from different alien races. Captain Ryan Hayes was the only human in the group. He gave Kate a small nod but said nothing. General Vextar stopped at the foot of Kate's bed. His forearms crossed over his chest. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator box that made his words sound flat and cold. "Lieutenant Morrison," the general said, "I have come to discuss your future service." Kate tried to sit up, but pain made her lie back down. "Sir, your injuries make you unfit for duty," General Vextar continued. "Humans are fragile beings. When damaged, they become useless. These burned hands prove this truth." The other alien officers nodded their heads in agreement. A crystalline officer stepped forward. His body was made of living crystal that reflected the room's lights. "General Vextar speaks correctly," the crystal being said. "In my people's military, we remove damaged units from active service. They slow down the whole group." A Zephyrian officer also spoke up. Her scales were bright red and she had heat vents along her neck. "My race has natural protection from fire and heat. We do not understand why humans have such weak skin. These burns would not hurt us at all." Kate felt her face grow hot with shame and anger. She looked at her bandaged hands. The white wrapping hid the damaged skin underneath, but she could feel the tight, painful pull of healing burns. "Perhaps," Dr. Lennox said in her soft voice, "we should move Lieutenant Morrison to office work. Filing reports, organizing supplies, tasks that do not need hand skill." General Vextar made a sound that might have been laughing. "Yes, put the broken humans somewhere she cannot cause problems. Humans always want to keep their damaged members instead of replacing them with better ones." Captain Hayes stepped forward. His face was red with anger. "General, Lieutenant Morrison is one of our best engineers. She has fixed problems that others could not solve. These injuries do not change her mind or her knowledge." "Captain Hayes," General Vextar said, turning all his eyes toward the human officer, "your emotional attachment to damaged personnel is a known weakness of your species. In war, we cannot waste resources on those who cannot perform." The general looked back at Kate. "Your hands will shake. Your grip will be weak. You will drop tools and make mistakes. Other lives depend on perfect work. You cannot give that anymore." Kate wanted to argue, but the words would not come. Deep down, she worried the general was right. Her hands felt different already. The burns pulled at her skin when she tried to move her fingers. How could she solder tiny wires or adjust small screws with hands like these? "The Coalition has invested much training in you," General Vextar went on, "but that investment is now lost. We will find you simple work that matches your new limits." A Vorthon officer spoke from the back of the group. His people had 4 arms like the general but were smaller and covered in gray fur. "My species has backup limbs for when one gets hurt. Humans only have 2 hands. When those fail, the whole unit fails." Kate felt tears in her eyes, but she would not let them fall. Not in front of these aliens who already saw humans as weak. Dr. Lennox checked her tablet again. "The healing process will take several months. The new skin will be tight and thick. Movement will be limited. Feeling in the fingertips may never return fully. There, General Vextar said. Medical proof of permanent damage. Lieutenant Morrison, you will report to Administrative Division when you are cleared for light duty. Your days of real service are over. The general turned to leave but stopped. This is why humans will never lead in this galaxy. You break too easily and heal too slowly. Other races are simply better built for the challenges we face. The group of officers left the medical bay. Only Captain Hayes remained. He walked over to Kate's bed and sat in the chair beside it. Kate, do not listen to him, Hayes said quietly. Your worth is not in your hands alone. Kate stared at the ceiling. But he is right, Captain. How can I do my job with hands like these? Every tool will feel different. Every task will be harder. Maybe harder, Hayes said, but not impossible. Humans have always found ways to work around problems. We adapt. We overcome. Kate wanted to believe him, but doubt filled her mind. She had worked so hard to earn respect among the alien crew members. Now she would be the broken human who got moved to easy jobs, the one who proved their point about human weakness. Get some rest, Hayes said, standing up. Things may look different when you heal. After he left, Kate lay alone in the quiet medical bay. She lifted her hands and stared at the white bandages. Somewhere under there was burned, damaged skin that would never be the same. She had always been proud of her skilled hands. Now they felt like strangers attached to her arms. Outside the medical bay's window, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through space. Kate had dreamed of exploring those stars, of building the machines that would take humanity further into the galaxy. Now those dreams felt as damaged as her hands. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but pain kept her awake. Not just the pain in her hands, but the deeper pain of knowing that everything she had worked for might be over. In the morning, she would have to learn what it meant to be a broken human in a galaxy that did not forgive weakness. 3 months passed slowly on the horizon. Kate's hands had healed, but they were not the same. The new skin was thick and tight. Her fingers moved like old hinges that needed oil. Simple tasks took twice as long as before. True to his word, General Vextar had moved her to the research division. Her new job was organizing data files and running basic computer searches. It was safe work that a child could do. Kate felt like a broken tool that had been put on a shelf. The other human crew members tried to be kind. They smiled when they saw her and asked how she was feeling. But Kate could see the pity in their eyes. She had become what they all feared to become, damaged and useless. The research lab was quiet most days. Kate spent her time sorting reports and updating databases. Her burned hands could still type on keyboards and hold data tablets. The work was boring, but it did not hurt. Dr. Linux often worked in the same lab. The alien doctor was studying samples from different planets. She treated Kate with professional politeness, but nothing more. Kate was just another damaged crew member now. Everything changed on day 93. The horizon sensors picked up something unusual in the Kepler Nebula. Space in that area was filled with colorful gas clouds that made it hard to see clearly. Most ships avoided the nebula because navigation was dangerous. But the sensors had found something big hidden in the gas clouds. Something that should not be there. Captain Hayes called all senior staff to the bridge. Kate was not senior staff anymore, but Dr. Linux brought her along to help with research duties. The main screen showed a massive shape floating in the purple and gold gases of the nebula. At first it looked like an asteroid or dead planet, but as the horizon moved closer, the shape became clearer. It was a ship, but unlike any ship in the known galaxy. Size estimate puts it at 10 times larger than our biggest dreadnought, reported Lieutenant Danny Walsh from the sensor station. Material composition is unknown. The hull seems to be made of something not in our databases. General Vextar stood at the center of the bridge with his forearms folded. Could it be a Zephyrian superweapon? No, sir, Walsh replied. The design is completely different. And, sir, the ship is old. Really old. Sensor dating suggests it has been here for thousands of years. Captain Hayes studied the image on the screen. Any signs of life? That is the strange part, sir. We are picking up life signs, but they are very weak. Like everything on board is barely alive. Dr. Linux stepped forward. Captain, I request permission to join the exploration team. This could be the discovery of a new species. Kate watched from the back of the bridge. Her damaged hands gripped a data tablet as she recorded everything being said. This was the most exciting thing to happen in months, but she would only watch from the sidelines. Granted, Hayes said. Take a full science team. But be careful. We have no idea what we might find over there. The exploration took 6 hours to organize. Kate helped Dr. Lennox prepare scientific equipment, though her clumsy hands made the work slow. She wished she could go on the mission, but knew no one would want damaged goods on such an important task. The exploration team took a small shuttle to the alien ship. Kate stayed in the research lab watching their progress on video feeds and reading their reports as they came in. The alien ship was enormous inside. The team found corridors wide enough for 3 shuttles to fly side by side. The walls were made of a golden metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Strange symbols covered every surface, but the most important discovery came in the ship's center. A vast chamber filled with hundreds of stasis pods. Most were empty and covered in dust, but dozens still showed active readings. These beings are alive, Dr. Lennox reported over the communication system. The stasis systems are still working after all these years. The technology is far beyond anything we know. Kate studied the video feeds on her tablet. The stasis pods were made of clear crystal. Inside each one was a being unlike anything in the known galaxy. They looked somewhat like humans, but covered in thick golden fur. Their bodies were much larger and more muscular than any known species. Can you scan them? Captain Hayes asked over the radio. Already running scans, Dr. Lennox replied. Captain, these readings are incredible. Bone density 3 times human normal, muscle mass that should be impossible, brain activity suggesting high intelligence even in stasis. Kate felt excitement building in her chest. This was why she had joined the space fleet, to make discoveries that would change everything. Even from the research lab, she felt connected to this amazing find. There are symbols on each pod, reported Sergeant Amy Bell, the team's security chief. They might be names or identification codes. Kate studied the symbols on her screen. They looked like a cross between writing and artwork. Each one was beautiful and complex. Her engineering mind started working on the problem of how to decode them. Dr. Lennox, Kate said into her communication device, can you send me clear images of the symbols? I might be able to start working on translation. Of course, Lieutenant Morrison. Sending now. For the first time in months, Kate felt useful. Her hands might be damaged, but her mind was still sharp. She began organizing the symbol images and looking for patterns. Hours passed as the exploration team carefully studied the alien ship. Kate worked in the research lab, comparing symbols and building a basic database. The pattern analysis was something her burned hands could handle. She used voice commands and simple keyboard work. Then Dr. Lennox made the announcement that would change everything. Captain, I believe I know who these beings are. The ship design, the stasis technology, the physical characteristics of the occupants. I think we have found the apex. Silence filled the communication channel. Kate dropped her data tablet. The apex were legend among the oldest species in the galaxy. They were said to be the first intelligent race to develop space travel. Stories told of beings so powerful they could fight cosmic forces themselves. Most people believed the apex were myths, made-up stories told by ancient species to explain things they did not understand. Finding them real and alive would be the greatest discovery in galactic history. Are you certain? Captain Hayes asked. The evidence is strong, Dr. Lennox replied. The ship matches descriptions from the oldest records. The beings fit the physical descriptions in the legends. And, Captain, if these really are the apex, we need to be very careful about how we wake them up. Kate's hands shook as she picked up her tablet again, not from nerve damage but from excitement. She was part of the team that found the apex. Even in her reduced role, she was connected to this historic moment. Begin revival procedures, General Vextar ordered, but start with just one. We need to assess their intentions before waking more. Sir, Dr. Lennox said carefully, perhaps we should study them more first. The legends say the apex were incredibly powerful. If they are hostile, they have been asleep for thousands of years, the general replied. One being cannot threaten our entire ship. Wake one up. That is an order. Kate listened to the conversation with growing concern. The general was treating this like a military operation instead of a first contact situation. The apex might not appreciate being awakened by people who saw them as potential weapons, but orders were orders. The exploration team began working on the stasis systems. Kate watched through the video feeds as Dr. Lennox connected coalition equipment to the alien pods. The technology was so advanced that it took hours to figure out the basic controls. Kate helped by analyzing the symbol patterns and suggesting which ones might mean release or wake up. Finally, they found the right combination. One of the smaller pods began to change. The crystal became clear and bright light filled the chamber. Slowly, the golden-furred being inside began to move. Kate held her breath as she watched the first apex in thousands of years open its eyes. The being was smaller than the others, possibly a child or young adult. It looked around the chamber with intelligent amber eyes. When those eyes focused on the camera, Kate felt like the being was looking directly at her. For a moment that lasted forever. The young apex stared through the video feed with an expression she could not read. The being was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Power seemed to flow from it even though it had just awakened. Kate realized that her burned hands were trembling as she gripped the tablet. History was being made, and somehow her damaged, useless hands were still part of it. The young apex being learned to speak faster than anyone thought possible. Within 2 days of waking up, he could understand basic galactic standard. By the end of the first week, he spoke better than some crew members who had studied the language for years. He called himself Fierce Heart, though the translation system suggested his real name was much more complex. Kate worked with the linguistics team to improve the translation programs. Her damaged hands moved slowly across the keyboards, but her mind worked quickly on the language puzzles. Fierce Heart was only 3 feet tall, but his strength was incredible. When he accidentally squeezed a metal cup too hard, it crumpled like paper. When he tried to open a door gently, he pulled it off its hinges. The young being seemed embarrassed by his strength and tried to be more careful. General Vextar saw the apex as a military opportunity. He ordered daily testing sessions to measure Fierce Heart's abilities. Kate watched these tests from the research lab through video feeds. She felt uncomfortable seeing the young being treated like a weapon instead of a person. "Show us your full strength," General Vextar commanded during one test session. "Lift this weight bar." Fierce Heart approached the titanium steel bar that normally required machinery to move. He gripped it with both hands and lifted it over his head like it weighed nothing. The watching officers murmured with excitement. "Excellent," the general said, making notes on his tablet. "Your species will make perfect shock troops for our military forces." Kate saw Fierce Heart's ears flatten against his head. The young apex set down the weight bar and faced the general. "We are not troops," Fierce Heart said clearly. "We are apex. We choose our own path." "In this galaxy, everyone serves the coalition in some way," General Vextar replied. "Your strength will be used where it does the most good." Kate felt her anger building as she watched. The general was talking to Fierce Heart like he owned him. Like the young being was just another resource to be used. "General," Kate said into her communication device, "maybe we should ask what the apex want instead of telling them what to do." The room fell silent. Through the video feed, Kate saw General Vextar turn toward the camera. His compound eyes seemed to stare directly at her through the screen. "Lieutenant Morrison," the general said in his cold, mechanical voice, "you forget your place and your limitations." He gestured with one of his 4 arms toward her damaged hands, even though he could not see them through the camera, but everyone in the room knew what he meant. "Damaged tools should not speak on matters of warfare," General Vextar continued. "Your broken hands prove that humans break easily. Broken things have no voice in important decisions." Kate felt heat rise in her face. The shame and anger from months of being treated as useless came flooding back. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Then something unexpected happened. Fierce Heart walked across the testing room and stood directly in front of the video camera. His amber eyes seemed to look through the screen and find Kate wherever she was. "Where is the one with the damaged hands?" he asked in his young but strong voice. General Vextar looked confused. "What? The voice that spoke just now? The one you called broken. Where is she?" "Lieutenant Morrison is in the research lab," Dr. Linux answered. "She assists with data analysis." "I want to meet her," Fierce Heart said simply. "That is not necessary," General Vextar replied quickly. "We have more important tests to conduct." But Fierce Heart was already walking toward the door. "I will find her myself." Kate's heart started beating faster. The legendary apex wanted to meet her. But why? What could a powerful being like him want with a damaged engineer? She tried to make herself look better, but there was no hiding her bandaged hands. The new skin was still pink and tight. Her fingers moved awkwardly when she tried to straighten her hair. 15 minutes later, the research lab door opened. Fierce Heart walked in, followed by Dr. Linux and several security officers. Up close, the young apex was even more impressive. His golden fur seemed to glow in the lab's bright lights. His muscles moved under his fur like steel cables, but his amber eyes were gentle as he looked at Kate. "You are the one with fire-touched hands," he said, walking closer to her workstation. Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. She kept her hands hidden under the desk. "May I see them?" Fierce Heart asked politely. Kate hesitated. Everyone who saw her hands looked at them with pity or disgust. She did not want to see that expression on the young apex's face. "Please," Fierce Heart said quietly. "I promise I will not hurt you." Slowly, Kate brought her hands out and placed them on the desk. The thick pink scars covered her palms and fingers. The skin was tight and shiny where the burns had healed. Her fingers curled slightly because the new skin was not as flexible as before. Fierce Heart reached out with one massive, clawed hand. Kate flinched back, expecting him to touch her scars. Instead, he stopped just above her hands and held his palm over them without making contact. "Fire touched you," he said with strange reverence in his voice. "Yes," Kate whispered. "Did fire make you stronger, too?" The question hit Kate like a physical blow. She stared at the young apex, trying to understand what he meant. I do not understand," she said. Fierce Heart pulled his hand back and sat in the chair across from her desk. For such a powerful being, he moved with careful grace. "Among my people," he explained, "we believe that great pain changes a person, not breaks them, changes them, makes them different, sometimes makes them stronger." Kate looked down at her scarred hands. "These hands are weaker now. I cannot do the fine work I used to do. Can you do other work?" Fierce Heart asked. Kate thought about the past 3 months. She had learned to use voice commands and simple tools. She had found new ways to solve problems when her hands could not do the old ways. "Some things," she admitted. "Different things." "Then the fire taught you new paths," Fierce Heart said with what might have been a smile. "This is what we call pain forging. When great hurt teaches great lessons." Dr. Linux stepped forward. "Fascinating. A cultural concept we have not encountered before." "Your people mark damage as failure," Fierce Heart said to the alien doctor. "We mark survival as victory." These hands prove she fought fire and won. Kate felt something warm grow in her chest. For months, everyone had looked at her hands and seen failure. This young being looked at them and saw victory. "But they are still damaged," Kate said. "Scars are not damage," Fierce Heart replied. "Scars are proof of battles won. They show the world that you are strong enough to survive what tried to destroy you." Kate stared at her hands with new eyes. The pink, tight skin suddenly looked different. Not like broken parts, but like evidence of her survival. "My people have many scars," Fierce Heart continued. "We earn them in combat, in training, in life. The more scars, the more respect. Because scars mean you have lived through things that would kill others." One of the security officers spoke up, but Lieutenant Morrison's hands work poorly now. "How is that better than undamaged hands?" Fierce Heart looked at the officer with patient eyes. "A sword that has been tested in battle is worth more than a sword that has never left its sheath. The tested sword may have nicks and scratches, but you know it will not break when you need it most." Kate felt tears building in her eyes, but for the first time in months, they were not tears of shame. "Your general called me broken," she said to Fierce Heart. The young apex's ears flattened against his head. "Your general sees only surface things. He looks at skin and thinks he knows the spirit underneath. This is why he will never understand true strength." General Vextar's voice came through the room's communication system. "Fierce Heart, report back to the testing center immediately. We have more evaluations to complete." Fierce Heart looked at the speaker on the wall, then back at Kate. "I will return to speak with you more. There is much I want to learn about fire-touched humans." He stood to leave but paused at the door. "Lieutenant Morrison, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "When the fire touched your hands, did you think about giving up?" Kate remembered those first days in the medical bay. The pain, the fear, the feeling that her life was over. "Yes, many times. But you did not give up." "No." Fierce Heart nodded with satisfaction. "Then you have already proven you are stronger than fire. Everything else is just learning new ways to use that strength." After he left, Kate sat alone in the research lab. She held up her scarred hands and really looked at them for the first time since the accident. The pink, tight skin told a story, not of failure but of survival. Not of weakness but of endurance. Maybe Fierceheart was right. Maybe these hands were not broken at all. Maybe they were just different now, forged by fire into something new. Over the next few days, more Apex awakened from their stasis pods. Each one was massive and powerful, but they all treated Fierceheart with great respect despite his young age. Kate learned that among the Apex, age mattered less than wisdom and courage. Fierceheart visited the research lab every day. He would sit with Kate while she worked and ask questions about human culture and technology. In return, he told her about Apex beliefs and traditions. Pain forging is our most important teaching, he explained during one visit. We believe that easy lives make weak spirits. Hard lives make strong spirits. Kate was updating translation files with her awkward hands. The work took longer than before, but she had developed new techniques. She used voice commands for most input and only touched keys when necessary. How do you know if someone has been pain forged? Kate asked. You watch how they face new challenges, Fierceheart replied. Someone who has never been tested will panic or give up when things get hard. Someone who has been forged by pain will find new ways to solve problems. Kate thought about her own experience. The first weeks after her injury had been full of panic and despair. But slowly she had learned to adapt. She found new ways to work around her limitations. I think I understand, she said. Fierceheart watched her work for a moment. Your hands move differently now, but they still work. You found new paths when the old paths were blocked. This shows pain forging. That afternoon, General Vextar called a meeting of all senior staff. The purpose was to discuss what to do with the awakened Apex. Kate was not invited, but Fierceheart asked if she could attend as a cultural advisor. Absolutely not, General Vextar said when the request was made. Lieutenant Morrison is research support, not senior staff, and her damaged condition makes her unsuitable for important meetings. Kate felt the familiar sting of being dismissed, but Fierceheart's reaction surprised everyone. The young Apex's golden fur seemed to bristle, and his amber eyes grew cold. You judge worth by damaged skin, Fierceheart said to the general. This shows you do not understand strength at all. I judge worth by capability, General Vextar replied. Damaged personnel cannot perform at full efficiency. Then you will never understand why we choose our allies carefully, Fierceheart said. The meeting went forward without Kate, but she learned about it later from Dr. Linux. General Vextar had proposed integrating the Apex into coalition military forces. He wanted to use their strength for combat operations and difficult missions. The awakened Apex had refused. We do not serve under leaders who cannot see true strength, the eldest Apex had declared. We choose our own path and our own allies. General Vextar had grown angry and threatened to force the issue. That was when Fierceheart had spoken up. We have been watching your crew for days, the young Apex had said. We see how you treat those you consider damaged. We see how you waste the wisdom of those who have been tested by hardship. We will not follow such blindness. The meeting had ended badly. General Vextar stormed out while the Apex remained calm but firm. They would not be controlled or commanded. When Fierceheart told Kate about the meeting, she felt a mix of pride and worry. You should not anger the general because of me, she said. I am not worth causing problems. Fierceheart's ears flattened. You speak like him now. Like damage means worthless. This is wrong thinking. He stood up and walked to the window that showed the stars outside. Kate, may I tell you a story from my people? Of course. Long ago, there was a young Apex warrior who lost his arm in battle with a space creature. The war leaders said he was useless now and sent him away from the warriors. But this Apex did not give up. He learned to fight with one arm. He became faster and smarter to make up for his missing limb. Fierceheart turned back to Kate. Years later, our people faced an enemy that could not be beaten with normal fighting. The one-armed warrior found a way to defeat them using the new skills he had learned. He saved our entire clan. Kate listened carefully to the story. The war leaders learned that day that losing something does not make you weaker if you learn to be stronger in other ways. Fierceheart continued. Your burned hands taught you new ways to work. Your mind found paths that your old hands could not have taken. Kate looked at her scarred hands. But I'm slower now. Less precise. Different, not less, Fierceheart corrected. You think in new ways because you had to learn new ways. This makes you more valuable, not less valuable. Over the following weeks, more problems developed between General Vextar and the Apex. The general wanted to study their technology and weapons. The Apex refused to share their knowledge with people they did not trust. Kate found herself caught in the middle. The Apex trusted her because of her scars and her kindness. The Coalition Command saw her as a bridge to the powerful aliens, but she was still officially just research support with damaged hands. Fierce Heart began teaching Kate about Apex technology during their daily meetings. The knowledge was incredible. The Apex had mastered energy manipulation, space folding, and matter reconstruction thousands of years ago. "Why are you teaching me this?" Kate asked one day as Fierce Heart showed her how their power systems worked. "Because you understand that broken things can be made into new things," he replied. "Our technology is not about perfect pieces working perfectly. It is about damaged pieces working together to create something stronger than the sum of their parts." Kate began to see the pattern. Apex technology was designed around the idea that components would be damaged or destroyed in use. Instead of trying to prevent damage, they built systems that became stronger when parts were lost or changed. "It is like your hands," Fierce Heart explained. "The fire damaged them, but now they move in ways that undamaged hands cannot. You think differently because you had to adapt. Our machines work the same way." Kate started applying Apex principles to Coalition technology. Her scarred hands, which had seemed like a disability, became perfect for the delicate, unconventional work needed to blend the two technologies. The modifications she created were unlike anything in Coalition databases. Systems that grew stronger when damaged, circuits that rerouted themselves when broken, machines that learned from their failures instead of simply breaking down. General Vextar noticed the improvements but did not understand where they came from. He assumed Dr. Linux was responsible for the advances. "These new designs are impressive," he told the alien doctor during a staff meeting. "Continue this research immediately." But Dr. Linux gave credit where it was due. "General, these innovations come from Lieutenant Morrison. She has been working with Apex technology principles." General Vextar's compound eyes swiveled toward Kate, who was sitting in the back of the room taking notes. Impossible. Her damaged hands could not perform such delicate work. "With respect, sir," Kate said, standing up slowly. "My hands are different now, not useless. The Apex have taught me that different can be better." "You are research support," the general snapped. "You do not have the training or capability for advanced engineering work." Fierce Heart, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up to his full 3-foot height. "General Vextar, you prove again that you cannot see strength when it wears the face of damage." The room fell silent. The young Apex walked over to Kate and stood beside her. "This human has done what your best engineers could not do," Fierce Heart said calmly. "She has learned to think like my people. She has taken broken things and made them into better things. Yet you refuse to see her value because her hands bear the marks of fire." General Vextar's 4 arms crossed over his chest. "One lucky success does not change her fundamental limitations." "Then test her," Fierce Heart challenged. "Give her a problem that your undamaged engineers cannot solve. See if fire-touched hands and a pain-forged mind can find the answer." Kate felt her heart racing. This was her chance to prove herself, but it was also a huge risk. If she failed, it would confirm everything the general believed about damaged humans. But when she looked at her scarred hands, she no longer saw weakness. She saw proof that she had survived fire and learned to be stronger. Maybe it was time to show everyone else what she had learned. "I accept the challenge," Kate said, her voice steady despite her fear. Fierce Heart smiled, showing sharp white teeth. "Good. Now we will see what fire-forged strength can accomplish." The test came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after Kate accepted the challenge, long-range sensors detected a massive fleet heading toward Coalition space. The Zephyrians had returned with twice as many ships as before. Emergency meetings filled the command center. General Vextar paced back and forth as reports came in from scout ships. The enemy fleet was huge, over 300 vessels of different sizes and types. "They have learned from our last battle," reported Captain Hayes as he studied the tactical displays. "New ship designs, different weapon systems, improved shields. Our previous strategies will not work." Kate sat in the research lab monitoring the communications. Her challenge from General Vextar was forgotten, as everyone focused on the coming battle. But Fierce Heart had not forgotten. "This is your test," he told her as they watched the enemy fleet data on her screens. "Your general wanted to see what you could do. Now he needs you to do it." Kate felt fear growing in her stomach. "This is too big. I am just one person with damaged hands. How can I help against a whole fleet? The same way you helped with our technology, Fierce Heart replied. By thinking differently. By seeing solutions that undamaged minds cannot see. For 2 days, coalition strategists worked on battle plans. Every simulation ended in defeat. The Zephyrian fleet was simply too large and too well prepared. Traditional tactics had no chance of success. Kate watched the failed simulations from her workstation. Her scarred hands moved across keyboards and data tablets as she studied the enemy formations. Something about their approach bothered her, but she could not figure out what. Their ships move like a swarm, she said to Fierce Heart during one of his visits. Individual units working together. But swarms have weaknesses. What kind of weaknesses? He asked. Kate pulled up more data on her screens. Swarms depend on communication and coordination. If you can disrupt their ability to work together, the whole formation breaks down. Can coalition technology disrupt their communications? Not directly, Kate said, frustrated. Their communication systems are too advanced and too well protected. We would need something completely different. That night, Kate could not sleep. She kept thinking about swarm tactics and communication disruption. Her mind raced through possibilities, but every idea hit the same wall. Coalition technology was not advanced enough to solve the problem. Then she remembered something Fierce Heart had told her about Apex philosophy. They did not try to prevent damage. They used damage to create strength. What if the solution was not to block Zephyrian communications, but to turn their communications against them? Kate sat up in bed and activated her personal data tablet. Her scarred fingers moved awkwardly over the controls, but her mind was sharp and focused. She began designing something that had never been tried before. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Captain Hayes. When she explained her idea, his eyes grew wide. Kate, this is either brilliant or completely insane, he said. Maybe both. Will you let me try it? She asked. Hayes looked at her scarred hands, then back at her face. You will need full engineering support. This is way beyond what you can build alone. Then give me the support, Kate said firmly. Let me prove that damage does not mean useless. Hayes called an emergency staff meeting. Kate presented her plan to the senior officers and General Vextar. The room was silent as she explained how they could turn Zephyrian communication networks into weapons against the enemy fleet. This is ridiculous, General Vextar said when she finished. You want to build a system that has never been tested, using technology we barely understand in less than 2 days. Yes, sir, Kate replied. And you think your damaged hands can perform the delicate work this would require? Kate held up her scarred hands. These hands have learned to work in ways that normal hands cannot. They have been tested by fire and proven strong enough to survive. Let them prove strong enough to save us. Fierce Heart spoke from his place at the table. General, you wanted to test her abilities. The test is here. Will you let her take it? General Vexitar looked around the room. Every other plan had failed. The enemy fleet would arrive in 36 hours. They had nothing left to lose. You have 24 hours, he said finally. If this fails, we all die anyway. Kate felt excitement and terror in equal measure. This was her chance to prove herself, but the stakes could not be higher. The next 24 hours were the hardest of Kate's life. She worked with a team of coalition engineers and Apex technicians to build her communication disruption system. Her scarred hands moved constantly, soldering delicate circuits, adjusting tiny components, calibrating sensitive instruments. The work that had once been impossible for her damaged hands became possible through new techniques and adaptive tools. She used voice commands, modified grips, and creative workarounds that normal hands would never have needed to develop. Your hands move like they are dancing, observed one of the Apex technicians. Very different from standard human movements. Kate realized he was right. Her hands had learned a new language of motion. The fire had destroyed their old patterns and forced them to create new ones. As the deadline approached, the system was almost complete. But one crucial component would not calibrate correctly. Kate's hands shook with exhaustion as she tried again and again to make the final adjustments. It is not working, she said, close to tears. I cannot get the resonance frequency right. Fierce Heart appeared beside her workstation. Show me the problem. Kate pointed to the calibration display. It needs to match exactly, but every time I adjust it, something else shifts. My hands are too tired and too clumsy. Fierce Heart studied the readouts. What if the problem is not your technique? What if the problem is thinking like undamaged hands? What do you mean? You are trying to make perfect adjustments. But what if imperfect adjustments work better? What if the slight tremor in your hands creates the exact randomness this system needs? Kate stared at him. Use the damage as a feature, not fight it? Here's let your fire-touched hands do what only fire-touched hands can do. Kate stopped trying to hold her hands steady. Instead, she let them move naturally with their new patterns of motion. The slight tremor, the different grip, the awkward angles, all of it became part of the calibration process. Suddenly, the system synchronized. All displays turned green. The communication disruptor was ready. The Zephyrian fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Coalition forces took defensive positions and waited as the massive enemy formation approached. Kate's disruptor system was installed on the horizon and connected to the ship's main power grid. All units prepare for contact, General Vexitar announced over ship communications. Remember, everything depends on Lieutenant Morrison's untested system. Kate sat at the control station for her device. Her scarred hands rested on the activation controls. Fierce Heart stood beside her, along with Dr. Lennox and Captain Hayes. Are you ready? Hayes asked. Kate looked at her hands. 3 months ago, they had been burned in a plasma explosion. Everyone had written her off as damaged goods. Now the survival of the entire fleet rested in those same scarred hands. I am ready, she said. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Coalition ships returned fire while Kate's system began its work. Instead of blocking enemy communications, it fed false information into their network. Ships received incorrect targeting data. Formation commands got scrambled. Coordination signals became chaos signals. Within minutes, the perfect Zephyrian swarm formation began to fall apart. Ships fired on their own allies by mistake. Entire squadrons flew in wrong directions. The massive fleet advantage disappeared as individual ships lost track of the larger battle plan. It is working, Captain Hayes shouted as coalition forces pressed their sudden advantage. Kate watched her displays as the enemy communication network collapsed under the weight of its own confusion. Her fire-touched hands had built something that perfect hands could never have created. A system that used imperfection as its greatest strength. The battle was won in less than 2 hours. The Zephyrian fleet retreated in complete disorder, leaving behind dozens of damaged ships. General Vexitar appeared in the research lab as Kate powered down her system. His compound eyes stared at her for a long moment before he spoke. Lieutenant Morrison, I owe you an apology, and the galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Kate stood up slowly, her scarred hands shaking with exhaustion and relief. Thank you, General. I was wrong about your limitations, he continued. And I was wrong about human weakness. You have shown me that strength can grow from damage and that broken things can become better than they were before. Fierce Heart stepped forward. General, now do you understand why my people choose their allies carefully? Why we look for those who have been tested by hardship? General Vexitar nodded slowly. I am beginning to understand. Lieutenant Morrison, I am recommending you for promotion to Chief Engineering Officer. Your unique perspective has proven invaluable. After the general left, Kate sat back down at her workstation. She looked at her scarred hands in wonder. These hands that had been called useless and broken had just saved thousands of lives. How do you feel? Fierce Heart asked. Kate thought for a moment. Different, strong, like I finally understand what these scars really mean.